Hello everybody. Today we're going to be talking about our project management report, which is a weekly report that we usually use to go over our standard projects, which helps us in the phase 3 and 4 of our projects as we implement them to keep track of our man days, project completion, so we make sure that we're staying on schedule and on budget. And to get there, we first have to go to SharePoint, and you can see I'm in the SharePoint main screen here. We then go to Programs, International Programs, and move down here to Tanzania. As we're going to Tanzania, we then will move to Planning Meeting, which is where we store all of our documents for each week. In this planning meeting, we have a lot of archived reports and other folders, but what we're really interested in is each community should have its own report, and this is a weekly report. Again, as we archive each week, it gets pushed into the archive reports. This should only be the most up-to-date and recent report. If I look in here, you can see that there's a lot of different tabs along the bottom. This helps us take a look at our community development, our technical, and our financial reporting, as well as helps us capture all of our issues and how we're going to recover from them, and then as we go along, our lessons learned. So we'll start here with our project summary. As you can see, this captures a lot of information that we don't know where it's coming from yet. In reality, it's coming from these other tabs, but if you're just looking for a quick glimpse at what the project is doing, this really gives us a good snapshot of what we're looking for. We'll come back to this project summary, but first I want to talk about some of the other tabs. So here in the community development, we have each phase listed over here on the left, and this phase corresponds exactly with our PBE, how we budget our projects. Up top we have what date it was accomplished, and so this was on the 30th of November 2018. And then in the activity phase, we have what it's actually called, and then the status of each different item. So there could be multiple items here, there could be more than 5, but here we just have the item and then what's remaining to be done, and this says it's complete, and then also the percentage complete that it is. If there's any additional comments, we can put that over here for maybe there's something that's being held up, or there's some sort of issue, any type of comment that we want to put in here that will help us review this at the end of the week. And this goes on for each of our different phases. So phase 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4, 5, and 6. It goes the whole way up to follow-up, although for this one with the implementation, we're probably not going to be tracking up follow-up, as this is going to go on for at least a year after we are done with the project. In some cases, like this 4.5, you can see that there's no activities. That's because we're not doing any living water in this community, and so that's not applicable. As we move over to the right, I want to explain a little bit about this. So this is for phase 3 and phase 4. So what that means is during the construction and the community development phases. So basically, while our staff are in the communities and actually implementing the work, we're trying to track paid staff man days. And so this is as we're paying our staff, whether that's a technician, an engineer, a community development officer, what days are they being paid for while they're in the field? And we're trying to track these in relation to our project budget estimator, so the budget of the project. Want to make sure that we're staying on schedule and that we're not getting we're not paying way too much to accomplish tasks that should take a little bit less time, and we also want to make sure that we are just being good stewards of those resources. So the first thing that we want to do as soon as we start off this project is in the PBE, we can count up how many man days we are budgeting for phase 3 and 4 for a community development officer. So we're in the community development tab, and so this is what we're doing is community development. In that PBE, we can fill up all of those man days, and we put that right here. That's the 67 man days that we have budgeted for in the PBE. Up here, we have the starting week. So that's the first week that we're actually sending somebody into the field as a community development officer. That's week 1. And so for this, we're going to put a Saturday. And so November 1st, if I look at my calendar here, was actually a Thursday. So what we're going to do is we're going to say the week ending on the 3rd. So that's the 3rd of November. And that means that this would also be the 10th, and so on and so forth. And we can move that right down the line. So during that day, what we want to say is we have 2 different columns here, man days and projected man days. So to start off the project, we may not, we don't have any idea of what the actual man days will be, except for what we're projecting. And so maybe we say, okay, well, we're going to send in 2 community officers, development officers, and that's going to be 2 people working 5 days apiece, and that's 10 days. And then they're going to come back to the office that next week, and they're not going to work any days. We're going to send 1 back into the field with all the technicians, and then they're going to stay in the field for an ongoing piece. And then maybe around December they come back for Christmas vacation, and then afterwards they complete the project here at the end. So that's what we're projecting. That's what we want to know. But right now, it's actually December 6th. So these projected are no longer projected. We actually know what happened. And so for this, maybe instead of 10 days, for some reason, there's only 8 man days that went. Maybe they didn't go on Monday, they went on a Tuesday. And so for that, we add the 8 here, and we delete the 8 here. And you can see down here, it starts to collect how many total man days have been accomplished. And then it adds up all of the other man days and says, okay, according to this schedule that we know, we're actually now 2 days under budget, which is great, except now that we went in a little bit late, I may say, okay, well, actually that means that we're actually going to have to stay an extra 2 days on that next week. As you can see here, now that I've changed these 2, it goes back and we're still just on schedule the way that we thought we were going to be. So as the time goes on, the weeks go on, maybe it's the next week, now we can say, okay, we're looking backwards into this week. So there's 2 days. Indeed, we took those 2 days, we put them here, and people came back, so that's 0. And maybe there was an issue in the community. And so we say, next week, we think that there might actually have to be some work done, and we might actually have to send somebody else in the field for a total of 7 days. And you can see here now, because there was an issue, this went up to now our projected man days are above what we originally projected. And that's fine. It helps us understand why we're, as we move along, why maybe we are spending too much time or too much money on labor. But if it requires extra man days to accomplish to make the project successful, then it's okay if there's a few extra man days. Our primary objective is to make this a successful project. So maybe that day comes along, we can delete this, and instead of 7 days, it actually took 2 people the full week. And so we might put 10 up here and then delete this one. And so now you can see it went from 7 to 10, now we're 5 days over schedule. And this helps us kind of plan out the rest of our schedule, saying, well, we have this issue up front. Is this actually going to keep us from going on successfully, or maybe at the end it means that we're actually going to end this sooner than what we thought we were going to. In that case, we'd only need 1 officer here on week 13, and then we're back down to normal. So there's no one way to do this. The idea is just to help us as we go on move forward with how many days are we actually using, what are we projecting that we'll use by the end of the project, and how does that match to our budget. And we do this for both community development and for our technicians. So the technical report is very similar. Here you can see it matches phase 3, which is the implementation, and all of the status of different items that may go along with that. How much is completed, the percent completed total, any comments that are listed there. And in the same way, we keep track of our total technical man days that we've used. That's technicians and engineers. projected man days, and the budgeted on the PBE. As you can see from this one, the 125, we're actually 4 days, we're projected to be 4 days under budget, which is great because if you look at our community development, what was originally projected is we may be actually over budget by 5. And so total, we're right about on schedule. So just as a recap, on week 1, that is the first week that we are actually charging money in phase 3 and 4 for, in this case, technicians or engineers. And so here we would put the end date, that's the Saturday at the end of the week for that week. Here we put how many paid man days were worked. And as we go along each week, we switch the projected man days up into the actual man days as we go along. And so by the end of the project at January 26th, there should be no hours or days in this column, and they should all be in this top column. Moving on to issues and recovery. Here there may be some issues as that things move along where we don't want to forget about them. Maybe this issue comes along and it's not gonna go away until we actually do something about it. And what that means is technicians or community development officers can be sitting in the field doing nothing until this issue is actually resolved. And so what we want to do there is we want to actually name that issue, we want to describe it, and then we want to say, what's the impact on it? Is this going to be a low impact? Can we continue to work and just casually work on it every week? Or is this going to be something that is very critical to the success of the project and it's going to hold up all of our work? So if that's a critical, then that puts it right in front of our face, allows us to address it each week, make sure that we're moving forward to resolve it. And we also want to come up with a recovery plan. So this is a status, maybe we're just finding out about it, but maybe we're actually in the act of implementing that recovery plan. And here we want to say what we're actually doing. So if we name what the issue is and we also come up with a plan, it helps us solve those things quicker. Moving on to lessons learned, we can actually draw all the lessons that we have learned over the course of the project into one place. That way, as we go through the next projects, we can review these lessons with our technicians, the community officers, anybody who's going in the field to make sure that we're not repeating mistakes. That it's not just one person who's learned the lesson, but it's actually our entire organization. And eventually we should be compiling these lessons learned and putting them into a single document to make sure that we're not repeating our mistakes and that we're really learning from all of those issues that come up in the course of a project. So maybe in this case, as maybe a new engineer is designing the project and they are designing where the solar panel rack will go, and they're designing all of their wire sizes and how much wire they need, and based off of a specific location, but that location happens to be maybe under some trees. And so here we might say in the category of engineering, what the lesson name might be placement of solar panels. And was it a problem or a success? It was a problem for us in that the solar panels that we designed couldn't go where they said that we were going to go in the Google Earth plan. And what's the impact of that? It means that we have to move our solar panel design, and we have to reorder maybe some extra wire. And recommendation, so in the future, engineers need to understand where it's being placed, where the solar panels are going to be placed, and communicate that with the technicians or anybody who's done the assessment to go in the field, which ideally will be the engineer who's designing it, his or herself. And so here, now that we've done this, we've named it. Again, that helps us understand what the issue is, and it's pretty much guaranteed that that will not happen again. just based on the fact that everybody now knows that this is an issue, and there's not going to be anybody who forgets it. It just kind of helps that learning process. The final tab here is the financial report. This is completed by the financial officer, and this is basically taking a look at our project budget estimator and taking all of the actual expenses during the project, putting them in their place, coming up with the total expense. You can see here, this is what's going to be inputted by the officer, this column, and we're comparing that to our PBE budget. And so for here, the actual expenses in the assessment were just a little bit over $1,000, and we're comparing that to what we budgeted was $4,000. As you can see, that's only 28% of that budget was used up for the assessment. And that could mean a few different things. That could mean that we over budgeted for the assessment, but it also could mean that there's going to be some things like labor or some materials that are going to hit the budget a little bit later that we just haven't accounted for yet. And we can move down the whole way through that. Again, there's a place for comments. If there's any issues here, maybe we want to explain why this is so low. But we can move the whole way down to a summary view. And there's going to be some added things here that are helpful. So here in the assessment, we have the budget. Now the budget is comprised of two different things, and that's the actual expenses that's done in country. And then there's also a percentage of that which goes to support. And so you can see here, there's a general Charleston support that comes up later. And you can't see what that is, but the community officer should know that it's about 22%, and that can be gotten from the PBE itself. And so what that means is 22% of this number should equal $251. And so we know that this budget is actually comprised of two different numbers, the in-country actuals and the 22% of Charleston support. And so if you add these two together, that's your total expense. So while here we say, okay, it's only 28%, what it actually is, if you include the Charleston support, is about 34% of that assessment. And you can do that for all of the different phases, phase 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then you get this total expense here at the end, where about half expended of all of our budget. In some cases, we'll have staff advances, which are intended to hit future expenses. In that case, we're going to say the total committed money to this project. Maybe it hasn't been expensed quite yet, but the total committed money is 57%. Down here, the finance officers also want to understand the man-days and how things are working. So they want to know how many man-days to date have technicians and community development officers accomplished, the projected, if how we're going to be moving forward, what we're projected to do, which is 197, and then what did we budget for, which is 196. So right now we're on really good shape for this project. We're only one man-day above what we originally budgeted, and you can see that over here as well. So here we have to date what we're doing, what we're projected to do, and then what we budgeted to do here. So as CD officer, this blue bar is above the orange bar. That means that we're projecting that we're now going to have more man-days than we originally budgeted. All of that information, community development, technical, finance report, and any issues are put here. And you can see here, this is the community, the date of the latest report, project number, what kind of model it is, and then what status we're in. Here is that financial report in the chart that I just showed you in the financial section. This concludes the basic training of our project management report. Again, this should be done every week so we can go over our status from a community development standpoint, what is complete, what is not, and what we see as our projected man-days to actually complete all of the remaining activities. Same with our technical, and then also looking at our finance as well. And the idea of all this, again, is not just to go through the motions, but it's supposed to help us manage the projects so that we can stay on time and on budget. Again, if there's any questions, please contact the Charleston project manager for any support. Thank you.